Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. Last week, I mentioned that it was feeling like spring and that the grass was starting to get quite long. So, this past week, I had to do something about that long grass. I was looking out from the shed sliding doors and I could see how long it was getting, and I just had to do something about it. And we had a few days of lovely, sunny, warm weather. So, the grass had dried out enough that I was able to get in and get a little bit of mowing done. First, I got in with the hand mower. I had to sort of clear the area so I could see and make sure that I could get into where I needed to with the ride on after that. So I went around the edge of the fence line and I went around the side of the veggie box and around where the outdoor seat is as well. Then I tackled the slope. There's sort of like a little bit of a runoff, and there's no way that I could get the ride on up there. So I did across in front of the shed right next to my path and then down the slope a little bit. And then I also did around the trees that we have planted at the other end near the water tanks. So they all look really nice now, all nice and neat, and you can see how big the trees are getting. Some of the grass had grown up and you couldn't quite see some of those plants. So now that's going to give them a bit of a chance to get going as spring approaches. And then I got in with the ride on and finished off the rest of the job. The hand mower was hard, especially on that slope, but then the push mower was also quite difficult because the grass was so thick and it really was still wet right down the bottom. It kept clogging up the chute. So I had to stop and clear it out, or it was just stalling because it was getting so caught up. So it did take a little while, and I had to kind of go over the same areas again and again because I couldn't get too deep into the thick grass. I sort of had to cut a little bit at a time. So, first round done, really. Probably have to do it again quite soon to get it down nice and low and neat. And then across spring and summer, it will end up being a regular job. And hopefully, I end up getting even more confident on the ride on and I can do a little bit more on the ride on as well. But I really needed to clear the space with the push more first so I knew what I was doing. I am thinking though that I'm going to have to do something about the sloped area out there. It is much too steep for the ride on mower, and I do want to plant out there. So I'm thinking that what I should do is complete my brick edging, which only sort of goes to the corner near where the stairs are, the entry stairs. So I kind of need to finish that. And I have the bricks, I just have to actually carry them all around and place them in their little jigsaws and get that all looking really nice. And then kind of get that area of the slope, I think, into another garden bed with mulch like I've done around the front of the shed. It'll be much easier to maintain and it'll make the space that needs mowing much easier to get to as well. So that's going to be quite a lot of work. I've already got a couple of ground cover plants out there, but they are slow to grow and they're also getting a little bit stifled by all of the grass around them as well. So if I give them some space, they should be able to take over and then create another garden bed moving around. I also spent a little bit of time in the veggie patch. I got rid of all of the rocket that has now gone to flour, so the goats got a really good feed out of that. I found a giant leek. Obviously, I didn't pick it last season. It's massive. But I did find some really lovely small sweet leeks. So we have a good supply of leeks to be able to put into our dinners. I also checked in on the garlic, which is looking good. Some nice big sprouts on that. So hopefully by the end of spring, start of summer, we have a really good garlic crop as well. We also had a whole lot of gravel delivered this week. With the removal of the dairy shed, it's now really opened up that space, and we've decided that we needed to flatten out that area in front of the shed where the roller doors are to make it much more easy to get vehicles in and out of there, and also just to flatten it out so it didn't become a mud pile because it was getting a bit muddy over winter this year. So that is all in and flattened out. We had 3 trucks of gravel delivered and then a bobcat to flatten it all out and make it look really nice and neat. We also had the driveways scraped back a little bit. There are a few areas where trenches from the tyres were starting to get a little bit too deep for cars. So we fixed up those spots. So just a couple of jobs that have helped to clean things up a little bit. Last week, I told you that I had dyed up some DK yarn and it was drying when I was speaking to you. So I can now show you those colours. I have brown streams and soft dim skies. While the sun shines. Winter sunrise. And tequila sunrise. Well, that's blowing out. It's not quite fluorescent, but it's quite bright. So I was a little bit sky and season inspired, as you can tell by the names of those colorways. And I am this afternoon going to dye up another few batches of DK yarn, and then I think I'm done for my stocks for the Big Wool Show. Hopefully it's enough and that everyone who comes by my shop to visit really likes what I have on offer. I also spent a full day this week on product photography. It was a hard day. It really is a lot to get everything looking really good. I've got a frame and a white piece of plastic that I have as my backdrop, and I have it sat by the window. I don't use any other lighting apart from the regular lights here in the shed. So I had to wait for a day that was overcast. So even though I was enjoying the sunny days, I actually was kind of excited when there was an overcast morning, and I quickly came down to the shed and got myself all ready so that I could get all of the photos taken with the light looking pretty much the same. And my main aim when taking my product photos is making sure that the color of the yarn looks as true to life as I can while I'm taking the shot. So I've played around with the settings of my camera, and I've got a good spot by the window with natural light, and I need it to be overcast. And that combination has made it so that I can get the color pretty much right. Trying to get the color right in editing can be a really tricky thing to do because it then changes the color of the background, and then you get weird colors happening with the background color, and you can tell that it's been edited. So I went through and took photos of all of the colors that I dyed up. I'm still going to have to do those last few batches that I'm dyeing up this week, and also my Christmas yarn as well. And then I went on to the editing phase. So in editing, I try to do as little as possible, really. I crop the photos down to the same size. I straighten up the image if I didn't line up the skein quite straight in the frame. I then change the highlights and the shadows a little bit. And that's the main kind of playing around with it I do. All I want to do is just make the yarn pop off the screen a little bit more, sharpen it up a little bit, and really not play around too much with the color, because as I said, I try to get the color right in the original shot. So a lot of work goes into that, and to make everything look really coherent. So I try and do as big a batches of photos as I can at one time so that the products online look roughly the same. And I need to now go through and double check what I have done with this new setup here in the shed, as opposed to the older stock that I have from when I lived in the suburbs in a different setup. So I kind of need to revamp and update as I go and as I dye older colorways. So I have to remember to do that. And I've forgotten on a few occasions, which is bit frustrating. But what I should do is set myself up a list and just check it off as I get it done on the new setup. And I'm really happy with how they're coming out. I really like how the color's showing up. I like my background. It's not a white, it's more of a grey, so it helps the colour of the yarn to pop out, and it's easier to edit than a stark white background. I also have to remember when I'm dyeing up older recipes to check if I've done a sample square in that colour as well. There are a few that I still don't have sample squares for, so when I'm dyeing that colourway up, I just put a little skein of sock yarn in with it so that I can then use that yarn to do my little sample. So again, I need to have my list and double check it off, and some I forget, but I am making some progress on completing the whole series of sample squares as well. I really haven't done a lot of any kind of craft this week, knitting, crochet, or spinning. I just haven't had all that much motivation to do it really. I have made a little bit of progress on the blanket that I'm making bigger. I'm up to the final side of the log cabin, and it is getting actually really quite large now. So you can see that's a section there all the way, and there's the other log cabin on the other side. I've got this tiny little bit of yarn left, which should be enough to get the right number of rows on this end, and maybe a border row later on. After I've done this, I think I'm going to try a blue. I've been back and forth with the owner of the blanket and she liked that color. So I'm going to try it out and see how it looks. And I think I'm going to do an applied edge. So go at 90 degrees so that it then has the stitch pattern back in the same way as the original blanket. I'll see how that looks. I'll do a little bit, send it to her to see what she thinks, and either keep going or rip back and try something else. I'm about to cast off the Christmas socks that I was working on last week, so I'm not going to show you those. My plan is to launch the Christmas yarn on Wednesday, the 8th of September. On that day, I'll be sending out a newsletter. So if you're on my newsletter list, you'll be the first to see the yarn and have an opportunity to buy it. And then it will be available in the shop after that. So if you're not already, sign up so you can get on the list to get your first look at that yarn. Then on the weekend, directly after that, I will be showing it here on the video so that everyone will be able to get a look at what it looks like and have a little chat about my inspirations behind it. Sorry, that turned into business talk again, not craft. As I said, I have not done a lot of craft this week. But what I did do, as you can see, is I blocked my flax jumper. So now the sleeves are lovely and straight. They don't bunch back up again, and it doesn't curl up at the bottom, and it's sitting really, really nice. So I popped it into a trough with some water and some conditioner and just let it soak down and settle in. These are both non-superwash wool, so I didn't want to agitate it at all because I don't want to felt it or to peel it in any way. Once it was all wet, I carefully took it out and let it just drain off, wrapped it in a towel to get out as much of the water as I could, and then I just laid it down on my blocking mat. I kind of squared off the body and I pulled down the front to sort of make a front and back because there's no short rows in this to make the back higher. So in order to make it sit better so it wasn't pulling up too high at the front, I just made sure that I blocked the back a little bit higher than the front. I then pulled the sleeves out because that was the area when it wasn't blocked that was bunching up. The garter stitch was making it shorter than it actually was. And as you can see, it's got a really good length down past my wrist. So I stretched them out and I measured them from the shoulder down to make sure that they were roughly the same length. So I didn't have like some weird short, long thing going on. And then I just let it dry out in the sun for a day or so. Once it was dry, I've clipped all of the ends. So everything's nice and neat now. I've left one end just on the back of the neck so that I can tell the back from the front. That's my little trick just to make sure that you know the front and back of your jumper once you've finished it. So I'm really happy with it now that it's blocked. I think it looks amazing. The sleeves are perfect. And it just shows the difference that it makes between having something directly after you knit it and once you've taken the time to block it out to the correct size. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.